Hey y'all, I have a really interesting story for y'all today that is set back in 1893. It's a triple murder and suicide in a general store in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and it begins in on December 18th, 1893. The victims are Anna Dodson, 21 years old, Mary Ellen Garrett, 26 years old, and Annie Hendricks, 23 years old. Mary Ellen and Annie are sisters. They were at J.C. Tucker's general store on a week before Christmas. It's about a week before Christmas on December 18th. It's a Monday, 1893. J.C. Tucker's store. It was on Texas Road, which is now we call it Towson Avenue. And the three ladies were shopping. Let's see if I can get this straight. I want to make sure I get it straight. So Anna Dodson and Annie Hendricks were in the back of the store by a wood stove. It's chilly outside. It's in December. It's a week before Christmas. It's cold, and they're buying some yarn. They're measuring out yarn, and they're probably doing some Christmas shopping. It's a week before Christmas. That's, you're out shopping, the three ladies. And in comes Bernie Patrick, 20-year-old Bernie Patrick. Well, he had been trying to woo Anna Dodson for about 2 years. And he was getting very frustrated because she just didn't want to have anything to do with him. So he had been drinking a lot. And he kept wanders in off the street into J.C. Tucker's store where the girls are shopping and they're measuring out yarn. Annie and Anna are in the back of the store and they're measuring out yarn. And he walks back where the girls are, and he's drunk. He's drunk, and he's been trying to woo this girl, and he feels like that the sisters, Mary Ellen and Annie, have been trying to persuade her to avoid his advances, and that they were just turning Anna Dodson against him. And so he was upset with them. He's upset with Anna Dodson. He's upset with the sisters. And so he walks over to where the girls are by the wood stove. They're measuring yarn. Where two of the girls are there, Anna and Annie. And he pulls out a revolver. Well, first he tells Anna, "Come over here, I want to talk to you for a minute." And she says, "Okay, give me just a few minutes." And he says, that means you're not coming at all." And so he walks over to her, he pulls out a revolver, and he shoots her in the chest. The bullet goes straight through her chest and out her back. Then he shoots Annie Hendricks and pierces one of her lungs. And he points the gun at his temple. Now in the store is Mr. Tucker and his young son. So they witness the whole thing, but they're safe. So he then pulls the gun. He's going to shoot himself, and he catches Mary Ellen Garrett out of the corner of his eye. She's back behind the counter. I'm guessing maybe she's trying to protect herself or hide from him behind the counter. So he goes over, points a gun at her, and says, "You too." And he shoots her. Well, I'm thinking that she's holds up her arm to protect herself like this, because the bullet shatters her elbow. It hits her elbow. So I think that she's trying to protect, natural. You're going to put up your hand. The bullet hits her elbow and shatters her bone up to her shoulders. And then he points the gun at his temple, shoots himself. He falls on the floor. Mary Ellen runs out of the store because her arm is just busted to pieces. She runs out of the store to, I think it's J.C. Smith's store that was next door. And people come out and help her and get her into safety. And other people start gathering around because now there's a crowd because they heard lots of gunshot. That's a lot of gunshot. That's what? At least four shots. And so they get Mary Ellen Garrett in to safety, and they go in the store, and there's bodies laying in the floor and a puddle of blood. Well, Ina Dodson, she dies instantly. I mean, she's shot through the heart and goes out her back. The report says that she hit the ground and never even groaned. So she died instantly. Now, Annie lived for about 24 hours. And Bernie Patrick lived about 24 hours. The bullet went in one temple, out the other. It blinded him. It did not kill him. It blinded him. His eyes were bulging from it, probably swelling. And he lived 23 hours. But he was just incoherent. The words that, he couldn't carry on a conversation. He wasn't aware of what happened. He thought somebody had put a blindfold over his eyes. So he was blind. He kept saying, "Take that blindfold off of my eyes. I can't see." And he lives about 24 hours. Well, Ina Dodson, now she dies on Monday. He shoots her. She's dead instantly. Her funeral is the next day. It's the very next day at her family's, at her parents' house. So the funeral, their funerals were at home, and the bodies were at home, and that's where they kept them. They kept them at home, and her funeral was at her parents' house the very next day, which I guess, they didn't embalm them or anything. They had to do it quick. They couldn't mess around. So her funeral was the next day at her parents' house. His funeral was the next day, but it doesn't say at his parents' house. It says what it says is he was buried the next day at the city cemetery, which is now Oak Cemetery. And so I'm thinking it was a quick thing. It was the next day, the day after he died. And it doesn't say that he had a funeral. The girls all had funerals at their parents' homes. It just says he was buried the next day at the city cemetery. I can't find stones on any of them. But I did find their plots. The guys from the cemetery went out with their book to help me find the plots because we were looking for stones. I couldn't find them. So the guys at the cemetery were real good I made them pumpkin muffins. That helped a lot. So they went out and they walked around the cemetery, tried to help me. We couldn't find them. So I'm doing the story from home because it's very windy and it was sprinkling. But if I could find those stones, I was going to do that story. So that's why we're doing it from home. And the thumbnail does have one of the girls' husbands. That is one of the girls' husbands. That's all I could find. And so, let's see. Where am I at? I don't even know where I'm at, but let me find where I'm at. So they were all taken to their families' homes. They died at home. Their funerals were at home except for Bernie's. Let's see where I'm at. So Mary Ellen Garrett, she's the one that was shot in the arm, shattered her elbow. The bullet went, I'm guessing that went in here. It goes right up her arm. It's shattered her bone up to her shoulder. The newspaper article that I read from 1893 says that they were afraid that she was still alive. Everyone else is dead. She's still alive. The report in the newspaper says they're afraid that they may have to amputate her arm. Well, she dies on Christmas Day. So a week from the day they were shot on the 18th, on December 25th, she passes away. And so on the records at the cemetery says December 25th, 1893. But it also says her husband, Peter Garrett. Now this is where it starts getting crazy. This is an interesting story. It says her husband also died December 25th, 1893. Now it doesn't say what he died from. He wasn't at the store. He didn't get shot. It was just the three ladies, and then the shooter turned the gun on himself. So Peter Garrett dies the same day that his wife dies. She's the one that got shot in the elbow, lived a week on Christmas Day. I don't know. It makes me think possibly he committed suicide on, the day his wife died, on Christmas Day. They had a rough week. It was a tragedy for Fort Smith. That was a tragedy, and especially for that family. And then there's another crazy twist. This just gets crazier and crazier. The girls, the sisters, the Oakley sisters, Mary Ellen and Annie, 20 years before they died, before they were shot and killed in J.C. Tucker's store in 1893, 20 years before, their dad was at that store. Mr. Oakley, I think it's James Oakley. Mr. Oakley was at the store. There's somebody traveling through town on their way to Texas, stops in the store. They get into an argument over something. It doesn't say what. The article does not say what. But the person traveling through town, it doesn't say their name because he was never found. He shot and killed Mr. Oakley, which is Annie and Mary Ellen's dad. The very same store 20 years before, shot and killed. 20 years before. This is the kind of stories that I'm looking for and that I want to tell you, because when I read this article, I'm going through these old newspapers from 1993 and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a crazy story. We got to tell this story. And then another thing, the girls had a sister that died 3 years before them of tuberculosis, and just 3 years before, and she's buried in that cemetery. Her husband is the one that in the thumbnail. He's the U.S. Marshal. He's the only one that Josephine's husband, I believe his last name's Taylor, William Taylor, U.S. Marshal William Taylor. His tombstone is the one in the thumbnail, and he's the only stone that I could find, and his is not an old stone. I'm figuring maybe one of the historical societies through the years placed stones for the U.S. Marshals in the cemetery, in the city cemetery, which is now Oak Cemetery. But anyway, I'm shooting this video from home because I went out to the cemetery. I couldn't find any of the stones except for Josephine, which she's not even in the story really. That's their sister that died 3 years before them of tuberculosis. But it is, that is still part of the tragedy, that they lose one daughter and 3 years later they lose two more daughters in the very same store that their dad was shot and killed in 20 years ago. Crazy stuff. This is crazy stuff. But I find it interesting, and it is part of Fort Smith history, so just wanted to share it with you. So I'll get together some more stories. I've got about 10 or more stories from just Oak Cemetery. There's a lot of history there. It's a historical cemetery, and so there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of people that were hung there from Judge Parker, and there's a lot of U.S. Marshals buried there that were under Judge Parker. I also have some stories of some of the historical homes in town, and some of them own storefronts, so we can find their storefront, which store that was theirs. And there's some really, all my stories are going to be similar to this. They just need to be told, a story that needs to be told, and I find it interesting, and I hope you do too. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So I'll find another story and try to get you another one recorded in a few days, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.